All right. Welcome, Hannah and Ariela. And everybody knows Sarah. So, guys, I wanted to bring everybody together to do an interview style, but make it more conversational. Every week or two, Sarah and I and Danny Mathers put together guides to help new enablers, who have just come into their role, or even for people who are, thinking about pivoting into sales enablement. So this week, instead of, kind of a boring PDF, I thought we would bring two absolute powerhouse BDRs who are strong women. And, I've had a chance to meet with both of them. I've worked with Hannah in the past. Hopefully we can bring some really great insights, not only from the BDR perspective, but also sales enablement. So, pay attention to some nuances here, enablers. How are BDRs, talking about their day to day? What are some things that we can do to help improve their processes and help them become even better? So we'll start, guys. Why don't you just introduce yourselves? Go ahead. I'll let you guys fight over who goes first.
I'll go. Okay, I'm going to go. I'm Ariela Solomon. I'm a BDR at WalkMe. I've been here for 7 months now, and this is my first role in sales.
Awesome.
Nice to meet you, Ariela, sorry. It's Chanah. I'm a BDR at Site. I used to work at WalkMe, so I know Sarah. I've not met Ariela yet. Nice to meet you. But I've been in this role for around 5 years in a couple of different companies, and very excited to be here today and hope to share some more insights on BDRing and sales enablement as well. So happy to be here today.
Awesome. Thank you guys. We'll start with you, Hannah, like your first BDR role. Why did you decide to get into sales? What made you decide I'm going to become a BDR and I'm going to get into SaaS sales?
Well, to be honest with you, Crystal, I had no idea what a BDR was when I first was getting into things. I graduated from college. I studied business management and entrepreneurship. I finished and I was like, what am I going to do with my life? And I basically was looking at some different internship programs and found one in Israel and kind of landed in this like business development, quasi like ABM marketing and supporting like conferences, which ended up turning into like outbound sales development. But I feel like with my background studying business, it was really like a good fit because I wanted to learn like how to grow a business and like who are our ideal customers. So it was kind of a nice like segue into the role, but very happy doing it and I've been there ever since. So happy accident.
Awesome. It seems like I especially for sales enablers, it seems like that's exactly what happened to most of us. Like, I think my background is pretty common, where I was a sales rep and, I was an enterprise AE for a few years, really successful, right? There was no good reason for me to decide I don't want to do this anymore, but lo and behold, I did. And I was just kind of burnt and I just sort of fell into enablement. So it sort of happens, but I get it. And Ariela, where were you? Like, what happened? How'd you decide to get into sales?
I think I actually manifested it now that I'm thinking about it right now. I'm relating a lot to the falling into the role, like you guys both just said. I come from a background of nonprofit. I studied nonprofit management. I got my master's in that. I've been 15 years in the field in resource development. And it just wasn't going anywhere for me. For various different reasons, it was not a good fit. And I was trying to fit a square peg in a round hole and just was not progressing in my career the way I wanted to be after 15 years. And a really good friend of mine was working at WalkMe, and she had made the transition from nonprofit to high tech. And she was really, really encouraging. And I actually started saying to my friends in the nonprofit world, I'm going to get into high tech I have to do this before I turn 40. I'm going to do this before I turn 40. And I didn't even believe it, but it was something I was saying to people. And this was the first role that was brought up to me. I was introduced to a sales leader within WalkMe. And before I knew it, I had the job. And that's how I got into it. And it's a good fit.
I absolutely love that. I am so big on, just putting it out there, right? Like I write stuff down. I tell people, certain things like, here's what I'm going to do. Here is what I'm going to do before I turn 45. Here's what I'm going to do before I turn 50. And, it's so powerful when you start just because you start believing it, right? And that's like the key to anything is you've got to believe in yourself in order to really start to make things happen. Because if you don't, you're not going to get anywhere. At least that's been my experience. But so cool. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that, both of you. It's super interesting to hear, and especially I think because I have a different perspective being in the States, of how people get into sales, right? I think in Israel, because it's technically, startup nation, right? And so, the need for sales has been just astronomical. And so it's like, I see all these different programs that are happening. There's one in particular that I follow. I think it's called Sales Class. And, there's a lot of sales leaders who, in Israel who are putting, people through these courses, to really get them ramped up to get a job in tech. And I think that's absolutely, amazing. So Kudos to you both. So one thing I wanted to also ask, and if you guys don't really have too much experience with it, that's totally fine. But what has been your experience with sales enablement in your sales roles, whether in your existing company or in past companies?
Anna, why don't you
I
start?
go first? Okay, no problem. So, like for me in my different roles, I found that sales enablement's been really important in order to like really understand everything that you need to know about the product and the processes. Because really, as a BDR, you're the first line of contact with all of the customers or potential customers. And if you don't make a very good first impression, then you may have lost your shot with that particular person or company. So really being enabled and having that like product knowledge from the sales enablement is super helpful. And then also being trained on like different ways to ask questions, like active listening, really being able to hone in on customer pain and why are they talking to us? Why are they here? Why do they want me or site, right? So these are really great things that I think like if we weren't enabled on them, like I don't know if we would do the company justice. So I've had very good experiences so far with sales enablement in all of my roles.
Awesome.
Actually, Carly, I was just going to add, like we do a lot of simulations, like whether it's like a deep dive on the website or like practicing, like one person's the customer and the other person's the prospect. I mean, the BDR. I find that to be very helpful to do that practice.
Yeah, absolutely. That's like my favorite part of enablement is training, practice, and coaching. It's super, super important. So glad you've had a good experience. And Ariela?
So, like I said, I was completely new to sales, new to high tech, new to the whole world, and needed to start at zero. And I was lucky enough to be able to work with a sales leader within WalkMe, Jeremy Levine, who's the person who hired me and gave me the chance to be here. And he served as kind of a mentor to me. And he was building up the team during the time that I was hired. And I got to spend a lot of one-on-one time with him, learning about the product. And he's just got a wealth of information, and he really, gave me all the tools I needed and really set me up for success. I also have, there was like an offsite sales enablement person as well, who also was very integral to me, getting to where I am today. And it also involved a lot of role playing, many hours during the first month or two, many hours of enablement. And I definitely think that if I was not set up for success the way I was by WalkMe, I certainly would not be performing at the level that I am right now.
That's awesome. Yeah, so I don't know if you know this, but Jeremy is one of my very closest friends. He and I, really clicked when I was in Israel in 2019, and he was so amazing to me. I actually had a Shabbat dinner with Jeremy and his family while I was there, and so he and I have just remained friends since then. And I know how much he absolutely loves his team. I know how passionate he is about, sales in general and just really building people, right? Taking them from, a baseline level and helping them to really see what they're truly made of. And he really excels in that. So I completely get it. So yeah, so that's really cool. I'm glad to hear that as an enabler myself. So Sarah, did you have any questions for these girls? Like I would love to dig into like their processes and all of that good stuff, but I'll let you ask a question or two.
Yeah, so because I work with both of them, I know how much of a machine they are. Like they are the best of they were like when Hannah was there, she was the best. Ariela is feeling it right now. And I know that you're both like, handling like you have like a busy life, you're doing like a lot of things. How do you manage how do you stay efficient? How do you manage your day? Can you give us like a little bit, some insight or maybe some tricks for future BDRs?
Sure. I can go first. So I think it's a lot about time management. Like I know that this is something I was actually taught when I was at WalkMe, but to like block off time in your calendar to do certain tasks. That way you don't fall behind and you can kind of make sure that you get everything done. Like whether you kind of put them like as like invites in your calendar, or if you just kind of like have a schedule, that tends to be very helpful. Then using a lot of like sales automation tools. So like you're not writing an email from scratch when you're doing a follow up after a discovery call, but maybe just personalizing it a little bit, using snippets, using cadences. Sales automation tools are your friends. Obviously, you can't be 100% automated, but personalization is important. But if you can automate the parts that that are the same, why do all that extra work? I also think like it's really important to really just focus on what your goals are and keep track of those, and also to keep that work-life balance. Like it's important to make time for yourself as well. Our role is very intensive. We're doing a lot of cold calling and emailing, but sometimes you need to like be like, the day's done. I've done what I can do, and give yourself that time to like decompress so that you can be fresh in the morning. But that's some of the things that I would say have been helpful for me. I don't know if Ariela has other things to add to that. I'm sure she does.
Awesome.
So I'm lucky that I have a lot of external factors that keep me in line throughout the day. I have 7 children, 3 children of my own, 4 stepchildren that are with us full time. My daughter, who's 2 years old, wakes me up in the morning, sometime between 6 and 7. I get out of bed immediately. My goal as soon as I get up is to get her to kindergarten, and I get out of bed, take myself a big power walk first thing in the morning, walk that girl to kindergarten, and blast my music, get really pumped, get a sweat going, and I just come into my office ready to play. Like
I love
I
it.
don't even drink coffee. I'm not a caffeine person. That's what I need. I need my loud music, my fresh air, my walk, and then my day is run around when my daughter will be finishing kindergarten. So I have to be very strategic with my time within that time limit. And the other thing that I do that I think is really helpful for me, that's not an external thing, is that throughout the day, I actually track my KPIs. Like, we have specific KPIs. We're supposed to make 50 dials a day, add 50 prospects, and send 50 emails. I actually track myself throughout the day because I know that number didn't come out of the blue. It is a magic number. And if you make those 50 dials, send those 50 emails, and add those 50 prospects, things are going to flow. So if I get to 3 p.m. and I've only added 12 prospects, or I've only made 30 dials, I power through and I try to make sure that I get to my KPI for the day. And I'll do that also towards the end of the week. I'll measure myself at the end of the week, make sure I've hit those targets, because I find it to be very helpful. And then I think that's enough.
That's
For a lot of
pretty
things,
awesome. I love that. I think, Jeremy had actually mentioned to me about the 7 children, now that I think about it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how does she do it? Like, I struggled with 3, and mine are 6 years apart. So it's like, I can only imagine. So amazing. To both of you. I gotta admit, I love that it was the 2 of you, because I think you guys are different in the way that you approach your work, and your backgrounds. But man, like I said, the amazingness, the tenacity, the very structured, driven process that you have, that's what's similar. And so I think it's pretty amazing. And Sarah, go ahead. Did you have anything else before I completely take over this conversation? So, all right. So one thing I did want to ask you guys is, like I said, what's really important to me as an enabler is training, practice, and coaching. So when it comes to personal development, right? Like, maybe not even necessarily, let's say you have a training, at WalkMe, or you have a training that's done by Marketing at Site, whatever. But not even that, but more like, I want to get better at this. I want to get better at this specific thing. A, what is that for each of you? And 2, how do you approach that?
I guess for me, like, if I want to improve, like, I feel like an area I can always improve is like on cold calling. So that for me comes with a lot of practice, but I also follow like a lot of industry leaders on LinkedIn and see like, what are they doing today? Like, what worked for them? And that to me is usually very helpful. And then I go and implement it into my workflow and see, does this work for me? Like, do I need to tweak it? And then just continuing iteration and practice. And then also, if I want to improve something and I know someone else on the team is better at it than me, like, I may book time with them and say like, hey, can you tell me a little bit more about like the kind of messaging you're using on LinkedIn? It seems to be working for you. Like, I want to try it. Those kinds of things I think are very helpful, like learning from our peers, like learning from our AEs also, because a lot of them either maybe they move from BDR roles or they've done BDR in the past and they have really great insight into the product and tips that we can use to really improve how we're doing our outreach and get better to reach the people that we want to speak to create those opportunities. So I think that's just leveraging the people around you to enable yourself, and like join more calls if you can, join more training sessions if you can. Like, we have a wealth of knowledge and like Guru and all these different platforms. So like, use it. Like, there's a blog with new articles every day. Read them. Like, keep yourself educated. Like, I think those things are really important.
I love it. That's awesome.
I'm totally echoing what Chanah said. The area that I need most improvement in, it's not specifically cold calling. It's cold calling to greenfield accounts. I've like identified this as a point of weakness for myself. Like, some people really enjoy it and they really have the words and they know what to say. But for me, it's a little bit harder to click on that first call, or even to pick up the phone for that phone call. And I totally just echo leveraging the people around you. I mean, I'm lucky to have unbelievable AEs who have a ton of experience, and BDRs around me, and sales leaders who are so happy to teach and happy to share. And like, when I don't know what I'm doing, I just pick up the phone or walk over and ask, and people will share with me their tricks. But I mean, if there are any tips that you or Sarah have about picking up the phone to a greenfield account, I will be happy to receive it, because it's something that I'm continuously trying to improve.
Yeah, I'm not going to pretend that is not tough. You are a brave woman. I think anyone who can pick up a phone on a cold call to a greenfield account is pretty dang brave. So But yes, I actually do have some tips, but I will share them with you after the call. I'll just send them over to you. I did this, maybe about a year ago, just created some messaging. So take it for what it's worth. But, and so that, that's great. Obviously training, coaching, practice, really big deal to me. I feel like that's where, champions are truly made, is in the preparation. It's not in the moments that you pick up and make the call. It's how have you prepared for that call, right? That's where, that's where you get better. And so it's super important to be following industry leaders. I was always the type of sales rep that, and I'm probably dating myself here, but I would literally print, messaging out, and I would, sort of jot all over it. Right. And I make some edits, and I'm like, okay, I need this to sound more conversational, right? This sounds too robotic. I would change some things. And then I would literally sit there and practice, like saying it out loud. Like I would I would make sure that like my conversational nuances and voice inflections were part of that. So it was natural to me. And I did that ad nauseum, honestly. Like I would just do it over and over and over and over. And, I would account for different types of questions. And, I remember when I first started out in sales, that's all I did. And so it's super important. So I can always, send out some tips anytime, but, now I wanted to also, get into a little bit more about your processes, because, obviously being a salesperson, it comes with, being able to have those conversations. But I think especially for a BDR, your workflow is super important. I remember, Chanah, when I first came to WalkMe with Tribal, I remember like you had your process down, right? And you were like, wait a second, like this is a lot, right? I'm not going to interrupt my process. And totally understandable, because I completely get that. And so, because it's almost like a machine, right? You've got to be productive, and highly, highly efficient as a BDR. So, what can you guys tell me about, your processes? What are like one or two things that you do to start your day? Like, when you get into the office, and then, maybe you recalibrate at the end of the day. But what are a couple of things that are super important to your workflow?
I would say like at the beginning of the day, like I want to go into my inbox and check my calendar and prioritize, like, what do I have today? Do I have discovery calls? What meetings do I have? How much free time do I actually have to do prospecting, to like add people to cadences, to continue calling? I also check LinkedIn to see if there's anything like really exciting in the news, like this company I'm trying to reach, acquire a new company or get an award, to see like, is there any specific companies I want to like focus on, because I've got like great content to reach out to them with. Like kind of spend like an hour before I start like my day, really getting all that together. And we have like our daily huddle, and then I try to do my calls, and then I usually prospect and like add to cadence later in the day and try to do like another round of calls, but try to keep it structured so that I find enough time to do everything. Because as a BDR, you can always do more tasks. You can always add more people. You can always send more emails and make more calls, but you kind of have to figure out the right amount of people to add and the right amount of emails to send to get the right amount of meetings and have the right amount of opportunities that you need to get to. And you still only have 8-9 hours in a day. So you've got to kind of really schedule that in order to hit those goals.
Yep.
My process is a little less regimented, and I admire you, Chanah, that you sound like you really have it together. I am a very, very productive person, but it's not linear. It's more chaotic. I start doing something, I get pulled into something else, I go back to that, and then I start cleaning something over here and organizing something over there, back to work, take a shower, make a meal, and then before I know it, all my tasks are done and I'm killing it. So I can't give great advice for like how I exactly structure my day, aside from, like I said, I start with a pump up in the morning. I do a meditation at 1:00, like after I eat lunch. I just like rest, shut down for 10 minutes, listen, or just meditate. And it really helps me to clear my mind. And I'll also I know we're all working from home right now, and never underestimate the value of a strategic shower. Like if I ever starting to feel like low energy, like a lot of times after I eat, I'll start feeling really low energy, and I'll just pop in a quick shower, and it just like, instead of a coffee, and it'll revive me, and then I'm ready to get back into it. So those are my tips, I guess.
Yeah. That's awesome. See, this is why I love, talking with both of you, because it's like, I'm actually a little more like you, Chanah, in that I am super just like, okay, there's been some lessons that I've had to learn over the years. And it's like, when you are that structured and regimented, you got to be flexible too, right? There has to be some flexibility, because at least from my experiences, getting into sales enablement, yes, we're super big on processes, super big on data. But at the same time, we're enabling human beings who are not just like we are, and they can be have very different personality types, and we have to be able to, show some flexibility in our, structured, life, to be able to communicate and to be able to connect with them too. And I think that's huge for especially people who want to get into enablement, is that you have to maintain that flexibility. And we've got the best of both worlds here. So gosh, what other amazing questions am I missing, Sarah? I had a whole bunch of them like written down.
Yeah, we actually have like a lot of questions. So girls, we also like, I think this, aspect, I'm like more like Ariela, but I think like I have a lot of lists and at the end everything is done, but I jump from one or the other. And this is why, like, when I do, like, for example, enablement project, I always try to offer two options because like it needs to be logical for you as well. But what we wanted to know also, it's what can BDRs do to improve the working relationship with their AEs? Because like you have like processes, you're both really successful, but like how do you, how do you manage your relation with your AEs? And do you have like maybe, top 3 actionable tips or something you can share with us?
Yeah, I can go. So basically for me, like I have probably more than 2 AEs that I work with, but I have 2 main AEs that have most of my accounts that were like kind of potted together. So like Gal and Sarah are like my go-tos. Like we have weekly meetings, but I don't wait for weekly meetings. When something happens, I'll just Slack them and just get in touch with them, ask for their feedback, ask for help with an email, or should I send them this case study or that case study? Or like, do you want to join my first call with them? And they're super collaborative and they want to work together. Like we have the same goals. So I think communication is so important, even if it's just a Slack message to be like, this person is going to join a call with me. Do you want to join? Or what's your feedback on this? Like, how would you respond to this? Because at the end of the day, like we're building opportunities for the company together and our success is their success. So like we want to be talking to them. I think also like celebrating success together with your AE is important, right? It's both of your wins. And then also like just setting up that, like those meetings with them is important. And I think having the mindset that you guys are working together to build something, like you'll have a much better relationship because you're just supporting each other. You're like one person almost. That's how I see it. So
I love it. I love it.
My tips.
Yeah, so I'm very lucky to work with amazing AEs who I adore. But when you're working this closely with people, you're bound to get into little scuffles here and there. And I think it's really important. One, I know this seems super obvious, and Chanah kind of like, it was so obvious that you would have a weekly touch base with your AE, but a lot of new BDRs who struggle with their AEs, that's like number one. You need to have it on the calendar, a weekly touch base, face to face, or Zoom face to Zoom face. Get things like talking about, not just in Slack, like actually speak with your voice, because I think things can seem more aggressive when you're writing or emailing, and it's better to just speak on the phone or speak in person and get it all out in the open so that things don't escalate and get uncomfortable. The other thing that I do for my AEs that I think is really appreciated is it's a relationship. Like you need to be in the positive emotional bank account balance with everyone that you're in a relationship with if you want it to work out. But when you're working with AEs, I make a lot of mistakes. They make mistakes. And in order to not get to a place where you're super frustrated with each other, go the extra mile for them. Maybe do things that are a little bit outside of your job description, not to a point that's out of boundaries or anything like that. But if you can help by sending them an annual report, I personally join every single meeting that I schedule for my AEs, and I know that they really appreciate it. It gives them just like a soft intro, and it makes the sales process more smooth, and they really appreciate that. And the final thing I would say is just keep them in the loop. Like oftentimes AEs are super busy. They don't want to be all involved in your work. But if you pull them into your loop and just, hey, this is an email I'm about to send, bring them in so that they get more involved, like whether to or not, in a kind way, obviously. But I find those things are really helpful.
Awesome. I absolutely love both of those guys, because it's, as an AE, I used to, work with, BDRs, and granted the BDRs that, back then were quite different from, what they are today, but it was always a little bit of a challenge, right? It was always, hey guys, are you there?
Sort of.
Are you
We
here?
lost you.
Oh my God, that was the weirdest thing ever. I'm so sorry. So literally just shut off. Like Zoom just shut off and like disconnect. I got disconnected. Anyway, so the last thing that I heard was Ariela, you talking about how to improve the relationship between BDR and AE. That was the last thing I heard. So, and I was just responding to that. Like, I love the tips. It seems to be like a hot topic right now too. Especially on LinkedIn, because BDRs are my favorite group to enable. And I think a lot of times AEs can forget just how tough the job is, right? And it's like, I've always been a firm believer, like, hey, you're giving your AEs a chance to like have a chance at making a good living. So like it's be really proud of yourself, right? And then my advice to AEs is always like, hey, keep that in mind. Like you don't have this deal if it's not for your BDR, right? Unless they're doing their own prospecting and then they find it themselves, but chances are that's not happening a lot. So anyhow, Sarah, I have one, final question. Like I mentioned before, ladies, International Women's Day. It's super important to me. It is right around the corner. What is your advice for women who, they're thinking about going into sales, but, they might be concerned with, I'm not a salesperson, or, maybe they just lack the confidence to sort of make that jump. What is like one or two, things that you would say to them if they were in front of you?
I would say, like, don't be afraid. Like, as a woman, like, we're already like really good at sales. Like, we can listen and absorb information. Like, we can talk to almost anyone, have like conversations, communicate with people. And that's like half the sales role. Like, not the closing part, but like as a BDR, like being able to talk to anyone and being able to actively listen are like two of the top skills that you need to be successful. And the rest can come with like training and practice. Like, that's really all you need. You have to believe in yourself and you have to want it. But like, don't let the fact that you're not a salesperson, not every person who's a BDR is a salesperson. Like, we're not like sleazy salesmen with like our briefcases and all like sketchy. Like, believe in the product that you're selling and, do your homework and like be enabled and have the skills that you need, which you can come with training on the job. But don't like say you're not a salesperson and like push that whole field away from you, because it's not what it used to be. It's not a sleazy role. It's perfect for people like us who can understand people, can read into the situations, can talk to people. Those are like really great life skills that translate really well into the BDR world. So I think it's a good fit for a woman.
Love it.
I think it's a job that is not for everyone. Obviously, you have to have certain character traits, I think, that make you good at this role. I don't think anyone can, I mean, maybe you guys will disagree because you're in enablement, but I think that not anyone can succeed at this role. I think you need to have like a little bit of that competitive edge, like a drive. If you're not driven by a little bit of competition, it might not be for you. I think that if you're highly organized and a little obsessive or tenacious or whatever you want to call persistent, the positive way of saying it, it could be for you. But I will say that in my previous roles, I truly felt like imposter syndrome. I literally felt like I was worthless, and it literally never crossed my mind that I would be good at sales. No one ever mentioned it to me. No one ever said, "Hey, you'd be good at sales," And I found out that I rock at being a BDR, and like it's unfolding now because I'm still new to it. But I'm surprising myself. So I wouldn't rule out, a profession that is respectable. You get to use your feminine power to bring people in and get them interested and speak to them and listen and be compassionate and make money, make a great living and support yourself or your family or, whoever it is whatever it is that drives you. But I wouldn't turn it away. I think that it's something to explore if you have those qualities.
Awesome. I love it. And, I used to honestly feel like, oh gosh, like, just taking sort of general, like introverts and extroverts, right? Like, oh, I don't know if introverts could ever do sales, right? I don't know if they could really do it. But slowly over the past few years, I have been proven wrong in so many different situations. People who if I met them, just in a social setting outside of work, they would, be pretty quiet. They wouldn't be, super outgoing. But and I, then I would never think like, oh, well, they'd be amazing at sales. But then like I was introduced to some people who I knew in that social setting. And then, I got to know them in a work setting, and it was like, holy crap, like you are amazing, right? Like there are certain skills, and, kind of like what you said, Hannah, like just the ability to listen, right? That's huge. And I think it's often overrated because a lot of times we're constantly wanting and thinking of our own agenda in our mind. And so it does prevent us from listening, but women are absolutely amazing listeners, I think. And I mean, there's some guys that are good listeners too. Okay. I'm not going to say that they're not, but they are. But I think having that ability to listen, and then I think just showing empathy, I think, pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, obviously empathy is huge now. And I think buyers are starting to, go down that route. They're human too. They've gone through the ringer like we all have these last 2 years. And it's like, you've got to be able to show that empathy as well and show that compassion. I mean, not in like a baby nurtured kind of weird way, right? But in a way that I think a woman is able to do that and it's sincere, right? It can be truly sincere. So yes, I love both, perspectives. But Ladies, those are the questions that I had. I mean, this has been absolutely amazing. Sarah, is there anything that you wanted to add to this?
I think we covered like more or less everything. It's just like, a pleasure to actually have the opportunity to meet this kind of women, that are like, amazing at work and outside. And I'm just really happy to see them shine. You see, they deserve it. 100%.
I agree. So thank you guys so much again. And we'll stay in touch on LinkedIn for sure.